on the run, riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
Hey everybody, Brad Chappell here, Crappie Connection. We're back at the Grizzly Show. And let me tell you guys, if you have not been to Grizzly yet, you've got to come down here and see this place. How do you feel about it?
It's wild.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's amazing building here. This new building is outstanding.
One thing I hadn't done yet, I'm going to introduce, here's Carlos, TJ, both guides in Mississippi. And, you know, kind of the thing that I got them on here today for is we're going to go through live scope tips. You know, everybody talks about live scope, and it's a really cool piece of equipment, but I want you guys kind of give us some beginner tips. And that's where, you know, maybe I can even learn, and then hopefully, you know, our listeners will learn some. But what would be a really good beginner tip? And y'all can kind of work off each other or whatever.
I guess I'll take it first. One of the biggest things I've seen with customers in the boat is distance. People overthinking things as far as distance. 10 foot and in front of the boat, if that fish shows up on that live scope screen and you look at that top number and it's under 10, 12 foot, you drop that jig straight down from the tip of your rod, and that's where that jig's going to fall every time. Every single time. You judge every other fish by where that bait's going to fall. And most people don't remember, hey, this is where my bait's going to fall. So either they overpitch it or they underpitch it. And that's a big thing with live scope. Getting your jig on the fish and people saying, oh, I don't see my jig. Hey, a lot of people pitching their jig 30 foot from the 30 foot
right.
So the jig's not even in the screen. So
I think you got to remember that it begins at that trolling motor or shaft or whatever you got it mounted on is
at zero. It
zero.
just begins right there at zero. So I tell people all the time, if you got a 13-foot pole, that jig's going to fall about 10, 11 foot right there every time. So you judge a fish. Generally, I start fishing for fish when they get to be within about 15-foot range.
Yep.
And TJ's probably the same.
15, 16 foot.
That's right. But you start fish. That's when and I tell people all the time, slow down.
Yep.
Be patient. A lot of people get so amped up. It's like
I think I'm that way.
Well, it's like a big deer walking into a field.
I want to shoot it.
You want to shoot it? When he gives it 30, I'm telling you, if you're on Grenada, any of these bigger lakes, and you see a 2.5 pound fish out there, he's 30 foot from you. I don't care who you are. Your heart's going to get pumped. And when he gets 20 foot, you're going to want to make a pitch at him. But
I'm shooting.
Just stop. I tell people, 99% of the time, just stop.
Yeah.
Let that boat coast in. Get off the troll more. Let it coast in. If you can get that fish to within 15 foot, you got a better chance at catching that fish if he hadn't spooked yet.
Yep.
But if you pitch at him out there at 20 foot and he's not aggressive and that jig swims by him going fast, he's out of there, buddy. He's not going to.
I see a lot of them run because of that.
He's not going to stand up for it. So you just be patient. That's the main thing I tell people. Just be patient. Let that boat coast up to that fish. Start fishing for him around that 15-foot mark, and you'll be a lot more deadly with your approach.
What about being on a trolling motor as far as on the foot pedal? Or have you noticed a lot of fish get spooked because of trolling motor? Or
Not necessarily. On a real calm, slick day, if you got a windy day, they're going to spook because the boat slap, not necessarily trolling motor. But one thing I've seen on real calm, slick days, somebody adjusting their feet to pitch. I tell them at 25 feet, we already know that this fish is going to be catchable once we get him into range. Get set up, get ready to pitch before, we get him within 15, 16 feet, because I've seen a lot of people shimmy their feet right before they pitch, and that fish takes off, and then the chase is on. We got to chase him down. But one thing I see with new people that never use live scope, there is no left and right on the screen. And a lot of times, if those fish aren't spooky and they can't get their pitching down and everything, I'll just say drop your jig down, drop it down right there, and I'll drive to it. But a lot of times, what I see that they can't understand, that fish will be on the right side of that screen, and I'm trying to tell them, he's further out. If you can see that fish and you can see your jig, you're perfectly lined up with him. If he's bright and you're bright, you're lined up. So, but a lot of times I see them start to move their pole to the right to chase that fish off the screen. And I say, look, go back to where you were. You could see your jig. Now you can't see your jig, so go back to where you were so you can see it again. And but if he's closer, he's going to be on the left side of the screen. They're going to be moving that pole to the left instead of straight back, choking up on it.
I think you got to remember that term scope.
Yeah.
It's like looking through a rifle scope.
Exactly right.
That's exactly what it is. Like looking through a pair of binoculars, I tell people, I'm like, you don't have a left and right.
Yep.
Your field of view is directly in front of you.
Yeah.
It's just directly in front of you. And just, if people remember that, most time people do.
Yeah.
Within the first hour of the trip, most people get it down and start to understand the concept behind it. And like TJ was saying, man, you realize the slightest movement of vibration of that boat spooks fish more than sound. I tell people, talk loud as you want. We can have radio on, but moving your foot. I tell people, if it gets within 20 foot, fish gets within 20 foot of that boat, don't reposition your foot. Don't move, don't walk. If he's a big fish, definitely don't move. If he's a smaller fish, £1.5 fish, they're a lot more tolerable.
You can tell these guys are guiding Mississippi. He said a small fish, £1.5. I mean,
well, I can say we're blessed down here, but most places that's a good fish.
Little
but down
small fish.
In Mississippi, £1.5 fish is a little bit below average. But I mean, that's just what we blessed with having down
small.
here.
I understand.
But just like a big deer or any other animal, the older they get, the more cautious they get, smarter. So you have to understand that bigger fish are smarter, more wary. I ain't gonna say they're smarter because they're still a fish. Their brain's not huge, but I'm just gonna say they're more wary. So he didn't get to be 3 pounds by eating and letting everything sneak up on him.
Exactly
he didn't get
right.
that big.
Right.
So you got to approach him that way.
Right.
Just like you can sneak up on a little 2-year-old buck. 6-year-old buck ain't gonna let you just walk up on him. He's gonna be real cautious about you.
He's gonna wait till dark before he comes out in that food
That's
plot.
right. That's right. That's the same thing.
As far as stay on that subject, as far as learning, I know the magic words are going to be time on the water as far as how you learn it, and I understand that, and that's like with anything that you do, whether it's playing a guitar like Hunter does, or shooting skeet. I mean, it's all having that time and patience. But give us a couple more tips that you think that really would help out somebody that just buying this live scope.
Don't get frustrated.
Don't get patience.
Man, it's a patient man's game. If you take your 8 spider rigging poles because you're not confident with that one pole learning live scope, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, everybody wants to catch fish, but the way I learned it, I had to leave all my trolling poles at home because I would do the same thing. I'd live scope for 2 hours or whatever and not catch anything. Well, I'd break out my trolling poles. That way I had fish to take home. But
four got to be better than one. What you think?
That's what you think, man. But that's what I had to do. I had to leave them at home, and I got frustrated a lot. I had 10 trips in a row that I didn't catch a fish when I first got my live scope. And then I caught 1, and then I caught 2 the next trip. Then one day, it finally clicked. Something clicked inside, and I was like, that's a crappie on the screen.
That's it.
And then I caught that crappie, and I'm like, well, that's another crappie on the screen. And then I went and caught that crappie, and
do you remember your first limit? Live scope?
Absolutely.
I do mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like your first deer hunt almost and being successful. Mine was like, I remember my first limit that I went out and caught of crappie.
Yep.
That's right.
With
I
live
remember,
scope
the,
only.
I remember the first crappie I caught with it. You know what I mean?
I do
Not
too.
not necessarily first limit. I remember finally being able to see that crappie and say, that might be a crappie. And then when he bites it, you're like, wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Drop down on there.
Yeah.
That was a good feeling there,
Yep.
man.
I got a live scope, I guess, about 2 years ago, and I remember I put it in, and I went by some well-known structure out on Ross Barnett, and I actually looked at it, and I said, man, I got to record this. And I sent it to all my buddies in our fishing group text, and I was like, whatever you got to do. I'm telling you now, sell something, pawn anything you've got, but go buy this.
Yep.
This is unbelievable. And, it's shown that way as far as tournament fishing and guiding. And, I mean, it's amazing little piece of equipment.
I was telling some guys out there earlier, even if you don't want to learn how to single pole and as far as what we call live scope and chase fish down, I've learned so much fishing sitting behind customers while we're spider rigging. Just by me looking at the live scope while they're spider rigging, I've learned so much about fish behavior.
What's something that you didn't know that you do now?
I've learned that those fish can follow your bait while you're trolling. They will follow your bait for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yep.
And you realize people like, oh, your bait. You turn the boat. I hear all the time, you turn the boat and that fish bites your outside pole. They want it faster, or they bite your inside pole. They want it slower.
Hey, Carlos, what happens if you raise that rod tip up that fish is chasing?
You're going to eat it. You're going to eat it. And I think that's a lot of things. I said, because you're trolling in a straight line, when you change direction or do any kind of radical movement, I think that's why they eat it.
Yep.
It ain't the fact that they want it faster or slower. That's what we used to think.
Yep.
But I just think that they're just like any predator. They're just like, oh, it was going a straight line. Now it's changing course, so it's trying to get away. I better eat it now before it's gone. I believe 100% that's why those fish.
Erratic.
That's why I tell people, for what I learned from live scope and trolling, don't troll in a straight line for too long. If you're fishing a small area, going back and forth across a ditch, hey, of course you got to do that. But if you're on a flat, move, zigzag. Brad can tell you just like anybody, even with long line, and Brad did a tip the other day that don't just troll in straight line. Bump that troll more to the left, pick them jigs up.
I used to make a lot of money in tournaments by that. Believe it or not.
The live scope changed all that up.
Made me broke when it comes to tournament fishing,
But yeah, I'm telling you, you learn so much about fish behavior with it, and that's what I tell guys. Even the older guys are like, "Man, I don't want to stand up and chase these fish and do all that stuff." I'm like, "You don't have to. You can put it on there and still build some trolling poles out, but you'll learn so much more about watching those fish."
Yep.
I learned more in a year of live scope than I have in 8 years of guide. Honestly, I have more about fish behavior just because looking at it. You thought you knew what the fish were doing, but we really didn't. Now we know what they're doing.
What gets me is these days when you put them in front of these fish and they just ignore
Yeah.
it. I know Josh Jones, good buddy of mine, he was telling me that he thinks these fish sleep, and he'll actually bump them sometimes to wake them up.
I've seen that. Those big fish I believe they're getting to such a lethargic state that they're not aware so much of. They feel bigger things come around, like you stump on the boat. I believe that.
He'll wake them up.
But a bait, Paul and TJ can tell you, sometimes you have to almost, if he's sitting on the bottom, you can almost drop that bait in front of him and shake it off the bottom.
Yeah.
Just keep doing that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you'll see that fish fins. He'll kind of start fluttering his fins, and he'll do that little pulsate, and once you get him to that point where he's aware now, get back on him, you can catch him. But as long as he's in that lethargic state, not moving his fins at all, you can put the whole tackle box in front of him, and he's just not going to eat it. It's just part of it. I mean, just like anything else, they just get lethargic sometimes.
A lot of times, if I'm fishing for them and they're not really noticing the bait like that, if they're lethargic and I think they're sleeping too, you can drop a big bait on them because a big bait's going to displace more water, and you can drop it kind of fast, and 9 times out of 10 they feel that. They feel that a lot faster than if you were dropping a small bait on them.
That's right. And I tell people all the time, I don't care what time of year it is or what the conditions are, I'm starting off with a big bait. I'm starting off with something like this beaver bottom, just something with some size, and this beaver bottom has ribs in it, so something that's gonna move some water. I know a lot of people liking the custom small hair jigs and things. That's all good and that's all fine. And some days those fish like that smaller profile.
Yep.
But day in and day out, she can tell you, we catch most of our fish on big baits. I mean, if they're gonna eat a big bait, why go to a small bait?
Exactly
You
right.
can see the bigger bait better. You can control it better in the water because you can just find it better on your screen. So I always start with a big bait.
I fished 3 different baits.
You're in my mind.
through throughout the whole year. If I can catch them on the slab magnet like that, that's the one I always start with. If for some reason that they're not attracted to that, they're not into it, I'll go to the 1 1/4 crappie magnet. And then another one that I don't have is a slab curly. When everybody's pulling jigs through the summertime, that's what we're pitching. We're pitching the slab curly to them. I feel like that little extra action on the tail, at certain times of the year,
Gets their
that'll
attention.
get their attention a lot better.
Right.
But there's been very few times of the year that I've had to downsize to this 1 1/4, and we did a little bit this winter. I couldn't get them to eat the big baits, and we dropped down to that 1 1/4, and it was just like flipping a light switch. But now that they're feeding back up for the spawn, they're eating big shad. We seen that when we were cleaning them, 3-inch, 3-4 inch shad, 5-inch shad in some of them, and that 2 1/4 inch slab magnet. That's really what we've been keying on.
Before, and I still pull a lot of jigs, of course, but everybody I talk to that's live scoping, and you might guys be different, but are you using bladed jig heads? So I don't.
Summertime, I will use them post spawn sometimes, but generally, I haven't
I
seen
wonder why.
I haven't seen the benefit of them over a regular jig.
Yeah, maybe
I have
that's
not.
it. I don't, because I want long line without.
I used to believe in them, man. I'd never fish with a jig head if it didn't have a blade on it in muddy Mississippi lakes. Never. And then one day, I guess I ran out of them and used without them, and it didn't seem to make a difference. And I look back at that, and I've never changed back to a bladed head at all.
One thing I've learned also about live scope, fish can find your bait and feel your bait a lot further than what we used to think.
Yep.
Oh yeah, they definitely can
You
see
can-
a lot further.
Fish can feel that bait hitting the water 30 foot away from them.
Yep.
I don't think they far as hear it. They might feel it or something, but they 30 foot away, they definitely can tell a bait is or something has entered the water.
Yep.
Because I've seen them do it in the summertime. They'll react if you pitch that bait out there and it makes a splash.
Carlos knows, just as well as I do in the summertime, the bite is unreal. And that's what I've tried explaining to everybody. When it's so hot outside, you don't want to be out there. That's the best time to be on the water as far as catching fish.
They're more active.
We can cast a jig and reel it, somebody brand new that doesn't understand live scope, they're reeling it 4 feet above the fish, 5 feet above
That's
the fish.
right.
Summertime, those fish will come up there and grab that.
Right.
Just like long lining.
That's right.
Yeah.
They
But
come from a longer way
Yeah.
to get it. And springtime,
yeah,
you got to be on them,
Yep.
buddy. You got to be close to them. So it's tough to learn live scope in the spring, but summertime is the time to actually play with it and learn it.
yep.
I know that's kind of where I started hardcore trying to learn it is, into May postpone. And I mean, like I said,
That's right.
my personal first limit by myself, live scope only, was in, into May.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a time like when fish get through spawning, for some reason they like wood.
Yep.
And before live scope on Grenada, we'd be spider rigging flats or something
Yep.
like that. We would target wood in spring, pre-spawn, stuff like
Right.
that, but we never would really target it in the summer and post-spawn.
Never in the summer.
thought about it.
No.
On Grenada, we never thought about it. But now, man, post-spawn, you realize a lot of fish are on wood, even on Grenada. You never thought Grenada would be a cover type, timber type fishing lake.
Yeah.
You think open water, but man, a lot of fish stay on wood and post-spawn, and with live scope, we're starting to see that.
We seen it last year on Sardis during the national championship. I was guiding through those days, and I didn't fish the tournament, but man, it seemed like every boat in the field was in the timber down there. And they wasn't there for nothing. That's the same fish we were catching.
Fish are there.
But what I did see is the more boats that packed in there, the more fish I caught in open water.
It spooked them out of it.
That's right.
When there was 50, 60 boats more or plus, in that timber, those fish moved back out towards the channel in that open water. And that's when the crankbaiters and longliners really got them. And that's when we got them, casting the curly tail.
Yep. Just learn so much about fish that's with that live scope that otherwise you're just guessing pretty much. Without it, you can learn a lot just by spending time on the water. And like I say, all these guys that's been fishing tournaments their whole life and for years and years, they know a ton about fishing, and they learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
They learned it by time on the water. But now, like I say, in the last year, I've learned more than I learned in the last 5 years. It's just, it accelerated that curve, that learning curve so much. And it's kind of scary what we know now in the short amount of time we've been doing it about the fish, because it's like we know what the fish are going to do before they do it.
Yep.
I know, we kind of talked about this on another podcast today is, conservation. What are some of the things that you guys are considering or doing to conserve these big fish? A
lot of us guys are on the same page already. We've already met and we've talked about it, and anything over 2 1/4, 2.5 pounds, those are going to be your really, really good breeders, and those are going to be your trophy fish for years to come, like the next year or the year after that. Those are going to be your 3-pounders. And really the big breeders are the 12 to 14-inch fish.
Right.
We've covered that before.
That's
too.
Right. That's
but
right.
There's got to be, you got to draw a line somewhere.
That's right. As far as us being guys, we're going to spend more time on the water than pretty much anybody, any individual, and we can't tell anybody what to keep and what not to keep. But all we can do is tell people what we are seeing on the lake, because we spend more time out there. And what we're coming up with is kind of a slot limit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you keep those 12.5 to 14-inch fish, 12.5, 13-inch fish.
That's my favorite to eat.
That's your favorite.
Absolutely.
That's right. But far as the bigger fish, those 2-pound to 3-pound fish in that range right there, those fish have 2 to 3 years left to spawn out of them, guaranteed. You let those fish go.
That's the best genetics too.
Best genetics for the lake. And a lot of people is like, man, catch 3-pound fish, we let them go. Actually, those 3 fish over 3 pounds are not as important to let go as those 2-pound to 3-pound fish, because those 3-pound fish probably going to spawn one more year. And then they're probably going to either die of old age, or they're not going to make it much longer. Yeah. If they live much past 3 pounds, we would be catching 4-pounders every year. And I can't tell you when the last 4-pounder has been caught anywhere. So,
I ain't seen it.
I mean, there's not many of them, so that lets you know crappie don't live much past that. I've been fishing for a 4-pounder for 20-some years.
I feel like they're a lot like deer. Just because he's 6, 7 years old don't mean he's going to be a 190-inch deer.
That's right.
Just because he's 6, 7 years old don't mean he's going to be a 3-pound crappie.
I believe the conditions have to be perfect for him to reach that 3.5, 4-pound mark. But it's some out there, but it's going to be like needle in a haystack type deal. I mean, it's been some great fishermen fishing Grenada, Sardis, Enoch with live scope for the last 3 years, and nobody's pulled the 4-pounder out. So I tell people, if you're going to keep a fish, those 3-pound fish, hey, get you a replica mount. You can let them go if you want to, but if you're going to release some, those 2-pound to 3-pound class fish are the ones you need to concentrate on releasing.
And, my main thing is, and how I'm looking at, and how I've actually done for years is, I'll go out and I'll catch a mess of fish for supper.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, and some of those days I probably could have caught a limit easily, but I said, you know what, I want to eat fish tonight, so I'm going to go out and catch me a dozen and clean them.
That's right.
I think that's just, if we all get that mindset, hey, keep what we need.
That's exactly how.
Let the other ones go.
People think all the time that guides, TJ probably can tell you the same thing. Man, you probably got a freezer full of fish.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And I tell people right now, I can guarantee you have more crappie in your freezer than I have in mine.
They ain't a crappie fillet in my freezer.
Yeah.
I tell my wife probably looking at my freezer right now. She's here with me. I probably got 1 bag in my freezer, and I caught them 2 weeks ago probably.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, I don't have a reason to keep a bunch of fish, and really nobody does, to get in your freezer and stay freezer burnt. Yep. Crappie are plentiful. If you want some to eat, go a week or two before
I think we've all learned through the years, too, that you can catch them 12 months out of the year.
Catch them 12 months out of the year. There's no reason to stock your freezer with 2,000 crappie fillet.
Yeah.
There's no reason to do it. If you're going to catch a limit of fish on Monday, why go back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and do the same thing?
You can't eat. The thing about it is, man, you can't eat 30 Mississippi crappie.
Not in one sitting.
You can't. I mean,
No.
You can't. And like you say, us being guys, of course, we ain't trying to tell people don't go out there and
No.
keep your limit.
No.
Ain't gonna do that at all.
No.
But just be cautious of what we're seeing because we're out there all the time. So we see the ups and downs of the fish and the cycles, and we just want fish for everybody to catch from here on out. So, we first got to be the first ones to step up and say, hey, we need to start doing something different.
Like I'm saying is, hey, if you need fish, keep fish.
That's right.
If you don't get out that many times a year, keep what you can catch.
That's
and
right.
Keep the limit for that lake.
100%. 100%.
But if you're fishing 50 days a year, it doesn't mean you need to keep 50 days.
No.
If we get, and
limits.
I think we as crappie fishing, the mindset is changing because of live scope. It's easing more towards that bass fishing mindset to where you don't never see a bass fisherman put 5 or 10 big bass in a cooler and take a picture of it. I mean, you just don't see it. And why can't crappie fishing ease towards that mindset? Yeah, they taste good, but I tell you what now, largemouth tastes pretty good too. But it's the mindset that we've gotten over the years that, hey, if I catch a crappie, I need to keep a crappie.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to have to ease away from if we want to.
Well, I think it goes back to, years ago, and I'm talking 20 years plus, was the only time people crappie fished was a spawn.
That's right.
People did not crappie fish in the summertime.
Yep.
That's right.
They might a little bit in the fall, but really didn't fall or winter. They crappie fished whenever I know in the southern part of the United States when the dogwoods bloomed.
Yeah.
That's when everybody went crappie fishing. And now, I mean, that's, Patrick and Tim was telling me a while ago that there's 60, 70 boats on Sardis Enid right now in January, and that's unheard of.
On a weekday.
Yeah.
On a weekday, not
That's
a
a lot of
Saturday,
pressure.
a weekday. And Brad can tell you, it really changed when people started learning how to long line and spider rig.
Yeah.
That's when we started realizing, hey, I can catch these fish in May.
They ain't on structure.
June.
They ain't got to be
July.
on structure.
Yeah.
People started learning different technique, and it's the same with live scope. Only thing different about live scope is people are learning size of fish and Pacific fish to target.
Yeah.
So now we have to adjust to conserve that because it's a change. I mean, that's the only thing you can't stop change. It's just the way it is. Technology is going to happen. So
And we love
we love it. I love seeing it. I love live scope. I love how much it's taught me. But we have to learn how to conserve because of the change that it has brought. And something's going to come next year that's going to be
Even better.
better than that.
You can imagine what it's going to be in 10 years from now.
Scary, man.
I honestly think you're going to be able to hit a target button on the screen and your boat's going to follow it.
If it gets any better than live scope,
It's going to happen.
I'm telling you, if it gets any better than that, I don't know.
It's
I don't
gonna
know what to
happen.
think about it.
The deal with me, man.
I wish I had the patent already because
Yeah.
I could be really wealthy.
Yeah.
But it's coming.
That's right.
Because everybody's saying, well, I don't know how you can get any better than side scanning and down image. And sure enough, boop, there comes live scope and
Yeah.
says, hey, man,
Yeah.
I just show you really what it's about.
Back in the day, if I caught 15 fish spider rigging, I kept 15 fish. I had 2 pounds of minnows with me that I had to buy that morning. I had 4 poles or 8 poles that I had to deal with every day, all day. I worked for those fish
Yeah, yeah. That's
right.
all day long.
That's right.
I kept, what I caught. And now, if I go out and catch 15 fish by myself, I never keep fish. I go out and catch 50, 60, 70 fish. I throw every one of them back.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's something that you can do, and you can move across the lake within 30 seconds.
That's
You
right.
know,
You
reel your pole in, pick your trolling motor up, and fire it up.
It's a
and
lot
move.
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Picking up 8 trolling rods.
you
Yeah.
can cover so much water fishing one pole, and it's it kind of amazes you. You would think, I can cover a lot more water fishing 8 poles, and I'm telling you, I can take one pole, go out there and start on one arm of the lake, and by the end of that evening, I can end up on the other arm of the lake, and I have a really good idea of where I need to be guiding at that day. And the next day, I might be guiding with customers that are up in age that don't even care about live scope. We might spider rig, but I scout live scoping because I can cover so much water and say, hey, this ditch right here got a good number of fish in it, but this ditch over here got bigger fish in it. We'll come here and fish for the more fish in the morning, and then later on we'll go over here for the bigger fish, according to how they react. But if I stay in one spot and spider rig all day, you just burn a lot of time. You got to cover water when you're scouting for guide trips, and that's pretty much what live scope allows me to do.
And like, we don't do much tournament fishing. We're too busy guiding. But the thing about live scope now, you don't have to pre-fish. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is pre-float.
Yeah.
Yep.
Find fish with your live scope. Never drop a line. Not throughout the day. Not one time. And back before when you were pre-fishing, you already had those fish sore mouth, whether you threw them back or not.
You got to see if they'll bite.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, years past, people tournament fishing is they'd come in a weigh in and be like, man, the fish have been there all week.
Yeah.
We have caught them all week out of this spot. Mm-hmm. And you look in the back of the truck, they have a cooler full of fish, and be like, well, you know what? I've got an idea what happened to those fish.
Where is it? They go back every day. But with
I've seen that happen a lot.
With live scope now, you can pull up on the flat and zoom it out to 100 foot. You see, hey, they're still here.
Yep.
And, hey, come back next morning and catch them. If the fish are there, if it hadn't been a big weather change or some kind of drastic fluctuation in water, you can get them to bite.
Yeah.
Just got to figure out what's going to get them to bite. But as long as the main thing about them is just seeing if they're there, and that's what live scope allows you to do, It's really a time saver. That's what I tell people.
Now, when I'm scouting for a trip, though, I'm dropping a jig. I'm going to catch some fish now. I mean, I may catch one or two and then pack up and move to another spot, but I'm going to get my feel of them, too.
That's right. That's right. TJ can tell you, when you start guiding full time, you kind of stop fishing a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you doing more teaching.
Yep.
You're doing more teaching than you are fishing, so you get less fishing time.
Absolutely.
So when you get a day in the boat by yourself, you're excited, but you're ready to set the hook on something. But I can tell you, like TJ said, you want to know how active those fish are.
Yeah.
You want to know, hey, are we going to have to come here and beg them to bite? Or can we come here and pitch jig to them and just have a field day with them and just yank them in the boat? You kind of want to know their attitudes,
All right. Next thing, I'm going to let both you guys, how would somebody get a hold of you guys if they want to come take a day in the old boat with you fellas?
I got all my trips are booked through Grenada Lake Charters. They're out of Grenada, Mississippi. So if you can just give them a call, their number is 662-227-9210. They can let you know what my schedule is looking like. If you want to fish with me, just request me when you call and make the trip.
That's when you want to go with Carlos.
That's right. That's right.
My guide service, Sling 'em In Guide Service, my number is 573-233-6885. You can also get a hold of me on Facebook through that page, or TJ Shands, my personal page. But I can send you a list of dates or whatever, see if we can link up, But anybody you book with down here can put you on fish. I mean, there's a ton of good guides down here. Me and Carlos, Patrick, we're all good buddies, It's not necessarily a cutthroat business for us. I mean, some people are, but
it's a lot of fish out there, and it's a lot of lakes that we choose. A lot of times me and TJ can be fishing different lakes one day, and the next day we'll be on the same lake, and we end up fishing within 200-300 yards from each other because for some reason, if you fish all the time, you're going to know kind of where to look. Yeah. And if a guide's good, you're going to end up fishing close to him sooner or later because he's going to find what you found. It's just you can't get away from it. It's just, it's just like professional fishermen. Like, when somebody finds a pattern, you can guarantee somebody else in that same tournament or field has found that same pattern.
Every time seems like for me.
You're rarely going to have something to yourself. Rarely.
Maybe a day.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Maybe a day. But after that, somebody's going to see you and you're going to have some company. And that's okay. Public waterways, don't mind at all. It's just a matter of sometimes you just got to take what you get, out there.
It's a double-edged sword with us trying to book guide trips. Social media is our number one.
Mm-hmm.
Word of mouth travels far, but that push of a button on social media, that's out there to
free advertising.
Yeah, it's tons of people see that. You can't book trips if you're not posting pictures. But you can't have an area to yourself if you're also posting pictures.
That's
But
right.
That's it.
You might have a guide trip book, but then you might have brung 15 extra
Yeah.
boats to that, like that day that, the day after you posted. So it's one of them things, you just got to deal with it as it comes. But
and it's not necessarily a bad thing to be crowded. You might have 30 boats around you, but you might be one of the only boats catching fish. You can't just get discouraged whenever
That's
you
right.
got a flock of boats around you.
yeah, that's another thing I have told people. If it's another tip. I don't even know if I want to give this tip. But if
Give it, Carlos. What is
Started
it?
it.
You get you a big group of. TJ kind of told it earlier about fishing Sardis, and you get a bunch of boats in one area. Get on the outside of those boats.
Absolutely.
No, spook
I don't care what lake you own in the country. Stay
Yeah.
on the outside of those boats right there.
We did it.
You're gonna catch fish.
We did it last week, man. We was fishing Sardis, and we had 30 or 35 boats. I don't know how many. It was a bunch.
Yeah.
And I asked my client, I said, would you like to leave these fish and go find new fish? And he said, absolutely. So we just picked up and moved 150, 200 yards away and dropped trolling motor and instantly started seeing fish, And then later on in the day, though, that crowd of boats started inching their way back down towards us. But there's so many fish in these lakes, man, and
Yep.
there's no reason for 30
fish 'em.
boats to be touching each other.
Yeah, and that's one of them things. People
I think
just.
we've all got them stories.
Yeah, well, so this is one of those things. People don't get a lot of time on the water, and they go
Absolutely.
out and see 3 boats sitting on a point. Hey, I'm gonna go sit over there by them. They must be
Yep.
catching some. Another guy, hey, it's 4 boats over
Yeah.
there. So it just keeps growing and growing. But us as guides, we've realized that hey, it's fish on different patterns on every lake you go to. So that's not the only group of fish on that lake.
If you're a guide
Yeah.
and you get frustrated because somebody took, quote, your spot, you're in the wrong business.
because that's gonna be a day in and day
Yeah.
out thing, buddy.
You better have 15, 20, 50 spots, that you can go at any given time and find fish.
And figure them out on the fly.
Yep.
That's part of it. Figure them out on the fly.
All right, guys. Appreciate both of you coming on today, and we're gonna have you back on again. But appreciate it, and like I said, if you have not hit the subscribe button yet, you want to help out the Crappie Connection, make sure you hit subscribe. Let your buddies know about us, and we appreciate everybody watching and doing what you do for us. Until later, we'll holler.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
About a mile from Big Muddy River, a place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my